My daughter refused to come to the hospital when I was on the verge of death because she was celebrating her husband's birthday. I'm busy, she said, even though the doctors begged her to hurry. 2 weeks later, I called the bank and did what I had to do. After which, my daughter burst into my house in a panic, but I had already made my choice. Before we continue, please subscribe to True Family Revenge Stories, and let us know where you are listening from in the comments. The steady beeping pulled me back from somewhere dark and distant. My eyelids felt as heavy as concrete blocks, and when I finally forced them open, harsh fluorescent lights stabbed into my skull like needles. "Mr. Lane, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, professional yet warm. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. The room swam around me. White walls, machines with blinking lights, tubes snaking from my arms. My chest ached with each shallow breath. What? I managed to croak. What happened to me? The nurse leaned closer, her badge reading Sophia Morales. She had kind eyes behind square glasses. You had a heart attack, Mr. Lane. You're at Massachusetts General Hospital's intensive care unit. It's Tuesday afternoon, April 15th. Tuesday. I remembered leaving for the grocery store on Monday morning. Everything after that was blank. How long have I been here? Since yesterday evening. The paramedics brought you in around 7 p.m. She adjusted something on one of the machines. You scared us for a while there. A doctor appeared at my bedside, young, tired-looking, a stethoscope draped around his neck like a badge of authority. He pressed the cold metal against my chest, frowning at what he heard. "Mr. Lane, I'm Dr. Robert Keene. Your heart suffered significant damage, but you're stable now. We need to monitor you closely over the next few days." Will I be okay? The question came out weaker than I intended. With proper treatment and lifestyle changes, many patients recover well from heart attacks. He scribbled notes on a clipboard. We'll need to discuss medication, diet, and follow-up care. I nodded, my architect's mind automatically cataloging the information. Heart attack. Significant damage. Monitor closely. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's life. Nurse Sophia adjusted my 4-drip. Your blood pressure is improving. Are you experiencing chest pain right now? Some. I shifted slightly and pain shot through my torso. Feels like someone's sitting on my chest. That's normal after what you've been through, Dr. Keene said. We'll manage your pain with medication, but don't hesitate to call if it worsens. The afternoon passed in a blur of procedures, blood draws, EKG readings, medication adjustments. Nurses came and went with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, asking about pain levels, explaining each machine. By evening, they deemed me stable enough to transfer to a regular room. Nurse Sophia coordinated the move, wheeling my bed through sterile corridors lined with identical doors. Room 421, she announced as we settled into the new space. This will be more comfortable for you. The room had a window facing west. Through it, I saw Boston skyline as darkness fell, the lights twinkling like stars. From up here, the city looked smaller, more manageable, almost like a blueprint I used to study. Your cardiologist will be by to see you shortly, Sophia said, checking the monitors one final time. Dr. Keene says he's a good man. You'll like him. Exhaustion pressed on me like a weight. At 69, I had prided myself on being independent, capable. Now I couldn't even sit up without help. The window gradually darkened as evening settled over the city. Somewhere out there, people were heading home from work, gathering for dinner, tucking kids into bed. Meanwhile, I lay connected to machines that tracked every fragile beat of my damaged heart. A soft knock at the door. Then he entered, tall, distinguished, with silver-threaded hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His presence carried quiet authority. "Mr. Lane, I'm Dr. Grover Ellis Keene, your cardiologist." He pulled a chair close and sat, opening a thick medical chart. "How are you feeling tonight?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted. "But better than this morning, I suppose." He smiled briefly, then grew serious. "I need to be frank with you. The heart attack was severe, what we call a STEMI. It affected the main artery supplying blood to your heart muscle." My mind, trained by years of architecture, grasped the mechanical nature of the problem. Dr. Keene pulled out an EKG printout. Jagged lines sprawled across the page like some abstract sketch. See this section here? This shows the damage to your left anterior descending artery. We managed to open it with emergency medication, but you've lost about 20% of your heart muscle. What does that mean for my future? With treatment, many patients live full lives after this. But I won't lie, you were touch and go for several hours. He leaned forward. Mr. Lane, do you have a family we should contact? My chest tightened. My daughter, Claire Lane Hartwell. She lives in Back Bay with her husband. Dr. Keene consulted his notes. We actually tried calling her yesterday. The situation was critical, and frankly, we didn't think you'd survive the night. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. You spoke with her? I did. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. In 25 years of cardiology, I've made thousands of these calls. Usually, when I tell someone their father has had a massive heart attack, they drop everything. What did she say? My voice barely rose above a whisper. Dr. Keene looked down at his hands, then back at me with compassion. She said she was busy, that it was her husband Damien's birthday, and she couldn't leave the party. The words hit harder than any cardiac pain. My monitor beeped faster as my pulse spiked. Even when you told her, it might be my last night? Unfortunately, yes. I explained the severity. I told her you were asking for her. She said she'd try to visit sometime this week, if her schedule permitted. I stared at the ceiling, fighting the sting in my eyes. The daughter I had raised, educated, supported through every storm in her life, couldn't be bothered to leave a party when I was dying. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Dr. Keene said gently. I debated whether to share it at all. But I believe patients have the right to know. No. You were right. My voice sounded hollow, even to me. I needed to know. He explained medication schedules and recovery expectations, but I barely heard. My mind replayed his words. She said she was busy. It was her husband's birthday. After he left, silence pressed in, broken only by the steady beeping of my monitor. Through the window, Boston's lights glittered endlessly, each one representing someone's life, someone's priorities. Claire had made hers clear. The ache in my chest wasn't just the heart attack anymore. She was busy. It was Damien's birthday. I stared out at the skyline. Families were out there, daughters rushing to fathers' bedsides, children who cared. Maybe Dr. Keene misunderstood. Maybe Claire hadn't grasped the severity. She could be scatterbrained, wrapped up in her own world. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time she had put her convenience ahead of my needs. It was just the most brutal. My mind drifted back 25 years, to when she stood in our kitchen, college acceptance letters spread across the table, her eyes full of hope. Dad, I got into Boston University. Can you believe it? I could. I had helped with every essay, every application. What I couldn't believe was the tuition bill. $42,000. And I had paid it every cent. My architect's salary was decent. But tuition at Boston University was no small expense. Covering Claire's education meant working overtime for years, skipping vacations, postponing any thought of retirement. Yet the look on her face that day, shining with hope and ambition, made it impossible to say no. So I worked 60-hour weeks for 4 years straight. Weekends at the firm, holidays spent poring over blueprints, late nights fueled by black coffee and aching shoulders. By the time Claire walked across that stage, graduating with honors in communications, my back felt permanently bent from hunching over drafting tables. But when she smiled at me from the podium, magna cum laude medal glinting under the lights, I told myself it had all been worth it. Then came the wedding. Damien Hartwell smooth-talking, always pitching some new idea, always promising big returns that never seemed to materialize. I distrusted him from the beginning, but Claire was in love. Dad, you only get married once, she had pleaded. I want it to be perfect. Perfect cost $15,000. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, every detail demanded to be the best. I emptied my vacation fund, borrowed against my retirement, worked extra shifts until my hands shook from exhaustion. The marriage lasted 2 years before they separated. Then they reconciled. Then they separated again. Each reconciliation came with a new venture of Damien's. Each failure left them deeper in debt. And each time, I was there with my checkbook. Down payment for their condo in Back Bay, $20,000. Loan for Damien's revolutionary restaurant concept that went bankrupt within a year, $9,000. Emergency help when Claire lost her job at the PR firm, $4,000. Car repair on their imported BMW, $1,700. I never kept receipts, but my architect's mind tallied everything in mental columns. The sum was staggering. Well over $100,000, maybe closer to $120,000. Not counting the countless Christmases and birthdays where I stretched my budget just to see them smile. And then, when I lay dying at Massachusetts General, Claire couldn't leave a party. The thought churned in me like acid. I rolled onto my side that night in the hospital, ignoring the tug of 4 lines, and looked out over Boston. Somewhere in their gleaming condo, Claire and Damien were laughing with friends, raising expensive glasses of wine to toast another year of his worthless life. She had told Dr. Keene she would try to visit sometime this week. As though her father's fight for survival was no more urgent than rescheduling a dentist appointment. The anger began as a knot in my stomach, then spread upward until my chest burned with something that had nothing to do with clogged arteries. For 69 years, I had been the reliable one. The builder, the provider, the man who bent so others could stand taller. And what had it earned me? A daughter who valued cocktail parties over her father's life. A son-in-law who had never worked an honest day, but lived like royalty on my sacrifices. A lonely hospital bed where I tallied up the brutal mathematics of unconditional love. The following morning, Nurse Sophia encouraged me to walk. My legs felt like lead pipes, but I forced them down the corridor. Each shuffle was a victory. In room 423, I paused. An elderly man sat alone, staring at a wilted flower arrangement. "Morning," I said, steadying myself against his doorframe. He looked up with weary eyes. "Morning. You're Edward, right? From 421. I nodded. "I'm Harold." His laugh held no humor. "My son cleaned out my savings while I was here. 35 grand, gone. Claimed it was for his business. All I got was that flower and a card saying he was sorry." The word struck like a blow. Another father, another betrayal. "Family," Harold said bitterly. "They think we'll always forgive them. That being a parent means being a perpetual safety net." I returned to my room unsettled. That afternoon, I made my first call. "Chase Bank, this is Michelle. How may I help you?" "This is Edward Lane," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "I need information on revoking the power of attorney on my accounts." "Certainly. To revoke, you'll need to appear in person with valid ID, the original power of attorney document, and signed revocation forms. Processing takes 24 hours once filed." I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the phone in my hand. 2 years ago, when pneumonia laid me low, I had granted Claire power of attorney. At the time, it seemed practical. Now, it felt like I had placed a loaded weapon in her hands. Days passed. My body strengthened with each walk, each cautious meal, each adjustment in medication. But inside me, something else hardened, a resolve I hadn't felt in years. One evening, I met Eleanor from room 418 in the small hospital garden. She was recovering from gallbladder surgery. "My daughter couldn't take time off work to be here," she confided, shaking her head. 30 years of raising her, babysitting her children, helping her through divorces. And now, when I need her most, she's too busy. "What will you do?" I asked. "Change my will," she said coldly. "Every penny goes to the animal shelter. At least dogs are loyal." Her words stayed with me long into the night. Friday morning, Dr. Keene pronounced me ready for discharge. "You've been through a tremendous ordeal," he said, pausing at the door. "Take time to heal before making any big decisions." I managed a thin smile. "Doctor, anger isn't what I'm holding on to." "What is it then?" "Clarity." The hospital's automatic doors slid open, and Boston's spring air filled my lungs. I had forgotten how alive fresh air could feel. My phone buzzed with a rideshare confirmation. A white Toyota pulled up, driven by a man in his 50s with graying temples. "Edward Lane?" he asked, stepping out to help with my small bag. "Yes. Paul O'Malley." His accent carried faint traces of Irish roots. "Mass general discharge, huh? Heart trouble?" I nodded, surprised by his bluntness. "My father had 3 heart attacks," Paul said as we merged into traffic. By the third one, my siblings were complaining about hospital visits interfering with their schedules. I turned to him sharply. "And you?" I stayed. "But my son?" "Haven't heard from him in 5 years. Big marketing executive in Los Angeles. Told me to stop calling. It embarrassed him to have a taxi driver for a father." The words hit hard. Another parent, discarded like an old blueprint. "How do you deal with it?" I asked. Paul's grip tightened on the wheel. "I learned family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. Who answers the phone at midnight. Who sits with you when you're hooked up to machines. My son didn't. But I found friends who did." He gestured at the rosary dangling from his mirror. A faded photo of a young man was taped to the dashboard. "Family is who chooses you, not who uses you," he added quietly. We passed through Back Bay, and I caught sight of Claire and Damien's condo just a few blocks off. Modern, gleaming, furnished with my money. I looked away. Paul must have noticed. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for ungrateful children," he said, "is let them face consequences." His words settled deep inside me. When Paul dropped me at my modest colonial home in Cambridge, he handed me his card. "My number's in there. Groceries, rides, whatever you need, call me." That's what real family does. I stood in my driveway, watching his car disappear, his words echoing in my mind. Family is who shows up. Claire hadn't shown up. Damien never would. But Paul had. So had Harold. So had Eleanor. My key turned in the lock. The familiar click was grounding. Home. My sanctuary. I had barely set my hospital bag inside when the doorbell rang, followed by urgent knocking. The frosted glass rattled under the pounding. "Dad, open the door. We know you're in there." Claire's voice. I froze. Her tone wasn't concerned. It was furious. I opened the door to find my daughter and son-in-law standing like an invading army. Claire's hair was immaculate, though her business suit showed signs of having been hastily thrown on. Damien loomed behind her, tall, confident, eyes hard. Claire pushed past me without waiting for permission. Damien followed, his presence radiating entitlement. "What stupid thing did you do with the power of attorney?" Claire demanded, her voice sharp as glass. "The bank called us an hour ago," Claire snapped, storming past me into the living room. "You revoked my authority? Are you insane?" I closed the door slowly, giving myself a moment to steady the trembling in my hands. "I was dying in Massachusetts General," I said evenly, "and you were at a birthday party." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Damien stepped forward, using his height to loom over me. "Old man, you don't understand what you're messing with. You need financial supervision. That heart attack clearly affected your judgment." "My judgment," I said, moving deliberately into my living room, forcing them to follow me into my territory, told me to revoke access to my accounts from people who couldn't be bothered to visit their dying father. Claire's face flushed crimson. "We didn't know it was that serious. The doctor made it sound routine." "Dr. Keene told you I might not survive the night." My voice stayed level, architect calm. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stammered, searching for words. Damien's hand tightened around her wrist before she could reveal too much. "Listen, Edward," he said smoothly, "you're confused. Heart attacks cause memory problems. You're mixing things up. We were there for you." I sat down deliberately in the armchair I had bought for myself years ago after working overtime to pay for Claire's wedding. "You're lying," I said quietly. "In my own home." "Dad," Claire's tone shifted, that wheedling edge she'd used as a teenager when caught sneaking out. "You're being manipulated by hospital staff. They've filled your head with things to make you angry at us. Get out." The words came out calm but absolute. Damien's face darkened. "You can't just kick us out. We're family. We have rights." "This is my house," I said, standing. "You have no rights here. You're trespassing." Claire stepped between us, her polished PR facade cracking. "Dad, please. Let's discuss this rationally. You're making a huge mistake that affects all of us." "The only mistake I made," I said, "was trusting you with access to my life savings." Damien's hands curled into fists. "You ungrateful fool. We've sacrificed for you. Claire spent years managing your affairs. And this is how you repay us." Sacrificed. The word felt bitter on my tongue. "I paid for your condo. I bailed out your failed ventures. I cleared your debts. What exactly have you sacrificed?" Claire shot Damien a warning look, but the damage was done. The mask was gone. Their true feelings had slipped out, raw and ugly. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. "Get out. Now." Claire's face hardened, all pretense gone. "This isn't over. We'll prove you're not competent to make these decisions." Damien leaned in close, his whisper hot in my ear. "You have no idea what you've started, old man." They slammed the door behind them, hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood for a long moment, listening to their car doors slam, the engine roar to life, tires squealing away down the street. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Not peace, anticipation. The kind of stillness that comes before a storm. That night, as I boiled water for tea, their parting words replayed in my mind. "We'll prove you're not competent." They weren't just angry, they were calculating. And I knew my daughter well enough to understand that she meant every word. Claire had always been good at constructing narratives, spinning half-truths until they became believable. With Damien whispering poison in her ear, she was dangerous. Canceling the power of attorney wasn't enough. If they were willing to storm into my house making threats, they'd be willing to go further. I needed to prepare for war. 2 days later, as I stepped outside to check the mail, my neighbor Mrs. Chen approached me. Normally cheerful, her expression was hesitant, almost strained. "Edward," she said, tugging off her gardening gloves. "How are you feeling after your incident?" The way she said it made warning bells go off. "Recovering well," I answered cautiously. "Why do you ask?" She glanced toward her house, clearly uncomfortable. "Your daughter stopped by yesterday. She seemed very concerned about you living alone. She mentioned you'd been forgetful, confused. She asked me to keep an eye on you." My blood pressure rose, but I forced a calm smile. "Forgetful, was I? Last week I gave you advice about your rose aphids, didn't I?" Her face brightened. "Yes, and it worked." "Then trust that judgment over gossip," I said firmly. 3 days later, I went to the Chase branch downtown to finalize additional security. After we finished, the branch manager, Janet Chen, pulled me aside. "Mr. Lane, I probably shouldn't say this, but your daughter was here yesterday. She asked about guardianship procedures." Ice filled my stomach. Guardianship? Yes. Specifically, what documentation would be required to have someone declared unable to manage their own finances? She mentioned post-heart attack cognitive impairment. "Did she file anything?" "Not yet. But she scheduled a consultation with our legal department next week." I thanked her, masking my fury, and walked out with a growing sense of urgency. Claire wasn't bluffing. She was planning a legal coup. By the following Tuesday, the scope of her campaign became fully clear. At Brewster's Cafe, where I'd been a regular for a decade, the owner greeted me stiffly. "Edward, good to see you. Managing okay?" "Managing?" I asked, suspicious. He shifted uncomfortably. "Your daughter and her husband stopped by. Said you'd been having difficulties since the hospital. Confusion. Impulsive money decisions." I ordered my usual coffee, paid exact change, and asked casually about the Red Sox season. By the time I left, he looked relieved. "You seem fine to me." "That's because I am," I said quietly. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my old leather-bound notebook, the one I used to sketch structures and calculate load distribution. Now I used it to map out the battle ahead. Claire and Damien, organized campaign. Targets: neighbors, bank, local businesses. Goal: establish pattern of decline, guardianship claim. Underneath, I wrote, counter-strategy required. Immediate action necessary. They thought an aging architect recovering from a heart attack would be easy prey. They thought wrong. The next morning, I called Catherine Doyle, an estate attorney whose reputation for airtight wills was legendary in Boston legal circles. "This is Edward Lane," I said when her receptionist answered. "I need to accelerate my appointment. How soon can we meet?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., came the reply. Perfect. The elevator ride to Doyle and Associates the next morning felt like an ascent to judgment. 14 floors above Boston, the city stretched out beneath me. Families supported each other here. And families destroyed each other. I finally knew which category mine belonged to. Catherine Doyle was in her early 50s, with graying hair pulled back neatly and a gaze sharp enough to cut steel. Legal documents were already spread across the mahogany conference table when I entered. "Mr. Lane," she said, extending a hand. "Before we proceed, I need to verify your mental competency." "Of course," I said, sitting straighter. "What's today's date?" "May 12, 2025. Tuesday. Who's the current president?" "Donald Trump," I said, suppressing a grimace. Her eyes flicked with amusement. "And why are you here today?" "To revoke my old will and create a new one disinheriting my daughter and son-in-law completely." "That's a significant step," she said carefully. "Are you certain?" I pulled my notebook from my bag and slid it across to her. "I've documented everything. They've manipulated my neighbors, attempted to poison my reputation, and threatened me in my own home. This is not about anger. It's about clarity." She read my meticulous notes, nodding slowly. "This is thorough. Very thorough." For the next hour, we crafted language as strong as reinforced concrete. The new will left everything, house, savings, investments, to the American Heart Association. Claire and Damien would each receive exactly $1. "Leaving them a token amount," Doyle explained, "shows you didn't forget them. It blocks them from claiming oversight." "Perfect," I said. 2 paralegals entered as witnesses. Doyle asked the formal questions. "Mr. Lane, do you understand the contents of this will?" "I do." "Are you making this decision freely, without coercion?" "Absolutely. It's the most logical decision I've ever made." I signed with a steady hand. The witnesses signed after me. Doyle notarized it, the heavy stamp pressing finality into the page. "This will is now binding," she said. "Filed tomorrow with probate court. Your estate is protected." As I rode the elevator down, Boston spread out before me like one of my old architectural models. For the first time in years, I felt light. Free. Claire and Damien had declared war on my independence. Now they would discover the cost. 3 days later, I sat in my living room, the late afternoon light pouring across the same carpet where Claire and Damien had once threatened me. The new will rested securely in Catherine Doyle's office safe, but I didn't need to hold it to feel its weight. Its strength wasn't on paper, it was in me. At exactly 4 p.m., I dialed Claire's number. Timing mattered. I wanted them both home. "Dad." Claire's voice was bright, as though nothing had happened. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," I said calmly. "I'm calling to tell you something important. I've changed my will." Silence. Then, cautiously, "Change it." "How?" "Completely. Everything goes to the American Heart Association. You and Damien will each receive exactly $1. To prove I didn't forget you." The phone clattered as if she had dropped it. I heard frantic whispering. Then Damien's voice came through, sharp. "Edward, you can't be serious. This is nonsense." "Dead serious," I said. The new will was signed 3 days ago. Witnessed, notarized, and filed with probate court. Claire's voice returned, cracking. "Dad, this is insane. You can't just, we need to talk face to face." "Feel free to come over," I said evenly. Then I hung up. They arrived 47 minutes later. I timed it. The doorbell rang with the same aggressive urgency as before, but when I opened the door, the change was obvious. They weren't charging in like victors. They looked smaller. Desperate. Claire rushed inside first, her perfect composure unraveling. Her hair was frayed, her business suit wrinkled from pacing. "Dad, please. Tell me this is some kind of joke." "No joke," I said. "Legal documents don't have punchlines." Damien tried his intimidation routine, stepping close enough to invade my space. "Old man, you don't know what you're doing. This decision affects more than just you." "Really?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "Who else does it affect?" He faltered. "Our future. Our plans. Our—" He stopped before confessing their full dependence. Claire dropped onto my couch, burying her face in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "Daddy, I made mistakes. I know I did. But completely cutting me out? That's not who you are." "You're right," I said. "The father who accepted your neglect and excuses died in Massachusetts General. I'm not that man anymore." Her hands trembled. "We can work this out. I'll call every day. I'll visit every week. Just don't do this." "Where were you on April 14th? I asked. She froze. "Where were you when Dr. Keene told you I might not survive the night?" Her lips quivered, but no sound came. "Don't bother answering," I said. "He told me everything. How you said you were busy. How you said you'd try to visit if your schedule allowed." Damien's face darkened, his voice sharp. "That doctor violated confidentiality." "No," I said coldly. "He told me the truth." Claire broke down, mascara running down her cheeks in streaks. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. But you can't punish me for the rest of my life." "I'm not punishing you for the rest of your life," I said, steady as stone. "I'm punishing you for the rest of mine." Damien knelt beside her, both of them below my eye line now, pleading like children. "Edward," he said, "don't do this. You'll regret it. Family is supposed to stick together." "Family shows up," I replied. "Family doesn't leave you to die alone." Claire sobbed harder, reaching for me like a child reaching for a parent's hand. "Please, Daddy, I'm sorry. I am so sorry." I looked at her, my once bright daughter, and asked the only question that mattered. "Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" Her face crumpled. Damien stood abruptly, pulling her up by the arm. His eyes burned with something darker than desperation, rage. "Fine. You want to play this game, old man? We'll see about that." "What game?" I asked. "The competency hearing," he spat. "We'll prove you're unfit. That heart attack scrambled your brain. No rational man destroys his family over a misunderstanding." I almost smiled. No rational daughter abandons her father on his deathbed. They stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Their voices carried down the driveway, shrill with blame and panic. I heard Damien curse. I heard Claire sob. I heard them argue about lawyers they couldn't afford. Then their car roared to life and tore away, leaving only silence in its wake. I stood by the door for a long moment, breathing in the stillness. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't charged. It was peaceful. That night, I sat in my chair by the window, the one perfectly angled to catch the last slant of sunset. The city lights of Boston twinkled like stars, each one a life, a story, a choice. Somewhere out there, Claire and Damien were plotting. Spinning new lies, drafting new strategies, calling whoever would listen. Let them. Every structure I had ever designed had been built to withstand pressure, weather, and time. My will, my legacy, my decision was no different. The phone rang, cutting through the silence. I watched it vibrate on the side table. I didn't move. For once, I let it ring. And that's where this chapter of my life ends, not with rage, not with bitterness, but with clarity. If you found this story powerful, please like this video, subscribe to True Family Revenge Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And when you're ready for the next story, just click the box on your screen. Thank you for watching.